This gentleman is the creator, writer, director of a series called Patriot on Amazon. Round of applause for Steve Patriot. This gentleman is our special guest. None of you knew he was coming. We didn't know he was coming until about an hour ago. So he ran off set to be here. We're so grateful. He is showrunner and executive producer for The Chi, which is for Showtime, which is shooting in Chicago right now. Executive produced by Common, who we all know and love. Round of applause for Elwood Reed. To his right is Elwood's co-executive producer and producing director for The Chi. He has also directed episodes of Scandal, of CSI Los Angeles, of Chicago Fire, Chicago PD. Big round of applause for Dave Rodriguez. And tonight, we had so many talented panelists, I said, okay, Dana, we're going to make you the moderator. You're going to be a hybrid moderator and panelist. So Dana Scott is pretty much the glue that holds together all productions that go through Chicago. I had a long list of amazing TV shows, including The Exorcist, the first season that she worked on This Is Us, that NBC hit show, and tons of outstanding independent films here in Chicago. She's currently the unit production manager for The Chi. Round of applause for Dana Scott. We just love you guys. Just talk about where your respective series are at. Let's talk about pitching pilots. Let's talk about what turns you on about television these days, maybe what's missing on the small screen, and let's have at it. You can have this one.
Mike, I'll be asking myself a lot of questions.
That's great.
Okay.
That's, any question you want to ask is good for everybody.
So I guess we'll start with just doing a quick recap from you guys about where the shows are currently at. Steve, do you want to go first?
Sure. We just finished writing our second season, and I leave shortly to start shooting our second season, and that'll put us about 6 months, I guess, out from being able to have them all finished and done.
Elwood or David?
I just finished writing the finale of our show literally today. It's sent to the studio network, and now I'm awaiting notes, which will be a lot of fun.
Okay, so first I guess let's talk about pitching projects. If each of you would kind of recap an experience you've had, or a challenge, or something that went really well, or just any sort of recap of an experience of pitching.
We're being filmed? We're being filmed, right?
Yes, behave.
Okay, I'll start. Well, Patriot, if anybody is indeed familiar with Patriot, it has an unusual landscape, and the tone is it's not ordinary exactly. Our genre is the suspense show, and the subgenre is the spy show. But we spend an awful lot of time doing an awful lot of other things on the show, and those are very hard to pitch. I remember drawing blanks when I would say during the pitch that it is at this point of the story where I would like to stop and then put on a folk song. We didn't have a lot of takers, but we had one, and that's all it takes. The better I think we were at pitching the suspense, the more room we got to do, to execute the other parts of the show that also excites us. So I was heavy on the suspense and light on the folk music, but then we went to shoot. We turned up the folk stuff, and we were able to scale back a little on the amount of the show that was strictly a thriller.
I can tell you a pitch story that went bad. I have to be careful about names here, but I've sold a lot of pitches, and I think it's kind of a little bit what Steve was saying, is that you do know, maybe this is just me, I always find that the less prepared I am, the better the pitch is. And when you're out pitching these things, at least I find when you go to like 7 or 8 places, your best pitches are, oh, am I popping my piece? I'm gonna hold it down here. Is that better? I was instructed to hold them like so. And you get to like the second or third pitch, and that's usually your best pitch, and then it goes downhill pretty quickly. Because it gets too, I think, stiff and rehearsed, and kind of excitement of that magic that you had for the project disappeared, and you're just kind of going, just someone please buy this fucking project. Because what you want to do is get a buy in the room, but I mean, I have a very funny, weird story that just happened to me with the pitch gone horribly wrong in 6 months of my time down the toilet, where basically I was given a book to adapt, and you know, there was a show there I thought, it was like this big hot producer whose show go unnamed, and they told me the studio's like, oh, the producer means a lot, you know, it's really good for the project, and so I go in to meet the guy, and he's watching TV, and he's barely paying attention. We talked for about 5 seconds. He goes, I fucking love your take on this. I didn't tell him shit about the book. And he's like, great, let's pitch it. So I go off, and his minions begin putting me through this note process, which just was endless in development. And again, I'm a little bit of a different person. I do not like that stuff. I like to, I don't say fly by the seat. I either have to know it intimately in my head, committing it to page after page of pitch document to me is really tiresome and takes all the fun out of writing. Then I don't want to write the fucking thing when I'm done pitching it. So 6 months go by, his assistant's driving me nuts with notes, and I finally tell him I'm ready to pitch because I can't take this anymore, and I go to studio pitch. And I usually like to pitch early in the morning because I'm fresher and the executives are not thinking about drinks or lunch or going home or all the problems we're having at home. And so this big fat producer goes, only time available is 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which is the worst time to pitch anything. It's the worst time to do anything except take a nap. And I was like, oh, fuck, I just want to get this thing over with, so yes, I agree to pitch. We go in there, and on the way in, I said, well, do you want to hear the pitch first? Because he had not heard the pitch. He's like, no, it'll be great. And he's like, but by the way, I have a phone call, and I may have to leave early. And I'm like, and I was like, he's like, maybe you can finish it quickly. And I was like, well, you haven't heard the pitch. So I go in there, I'm already angry at this guy. You motherfucker. And I get in, and you know, there's a lot of sort of kibitzing when you go into a room and you kind of like make small talk, and like, you know, we make small talk, and I've kind of got them in. I've started pitching the character and the story, and I'm into it. I can see them, they're into it. And in the middle of it, the producer's phone rings, and he lets it ring on the table for the whole 10 minutes. You know, for the the 10 rings or whatever it is. And I recover my pitch. The phone rings again. And he holds up a hand. He's like, hold on, let me just take this. He has a 2-minute conversation in the middle of my pitch on the phone. He says, okay, sorry, start again. So I start all over again. I get the studio back into it. And he stops me in the middle of it, the pitch, and says, I wouldn't do that. In the middle of the pitch. And I was like, what? And at this point, I want to strangle this person. And there's dead silence, and I said, okay, what would you do? And he, be careful here. Let's just say he pitches something very cockamamie with high tech. It was an insane show pitch he had. And I looked at him, it didn't have any bearing resemblance to the show I was pitching. And I was like, well, that's an interesting show, you know, tell me more about it. And I could see the studios now looking at me like, you gotta stop. This is one of our big producers, you cannot bust this guy's balls in front of us. And I was pissed, because at that point I didn't want to do the project anymore. I'd written too many documents, and I was like, fuck it. You know, he kind of stumbles and stammers through his like, very awkward high-tech pitch involving drones and you know, weird shit like that, and I'm like, okay. He's like, but I gotta go to a meeting, I'm sure you got this, and he leaves. And I just turned to the studio, and I could tell the studio knew it was over. The guy capped his pen, and that was it. So it was 6 months of my life breaking. I had a good property, a good pitch, and I was so tired of the process, which I think is something you guys are probably all going through right now, is that just the process. And you know, here I thought I had this big star producer, great studio, great project. You know, they're talking big name directors, and I was so sick of the process and sick of this person. I thought, I don't want to work with this person, and I can't see myself working with this person, nor do I want to continue to do this because the project is dead to me. So I think, you know, it's a long story to say. It's like sometimes there's that, you know, sort of magic in a bottle that you happen to catch, and you just kind of pass it off really quickly, and someone buys it. And like Stephen said, it only does take one person to do that, and it's that one person that sort of can understand your passion for the project, and that's, I think, the hardest fit in this marketplace. It's become even more complicated now because back in the day there was only a couple outlets you could pitch. Now there's dozens, and it's just depending on what their needs are at that time. If you walk in with the right thing, you can get that right person to say yes. So it's a daunting process. It's the process it's part of the process I hate the most.
Excellent. Okay, how about you, Dave? Do you have a good pitch story?
No, I've got. I'm typically, I come from the independent film background, and then I started directing TV a few years ago, and with the eye on becoming a producing director sooner than later, because I really wanted to establish sort of my own dynamic and family with the crew and the cast, and do the best that I could executing the vision that Elwood and his writing team have and had. So that's always been my, well, that was my, one of my earlier goals in TV, or my short-term goal in TV. And I love doing the job, and I love being a producing director, but I also wrote my first 3 independent features, and I've written some pilots, and I pitched a couple things. I haven't had any crazy stories, but I have something that I'm going to start pitching once I'm done with my commitment with the Shy. But the only thing I can say is that, I've had one of my agents, or a couple of my agents, are really excited about this one project that I have that I'm going to go out with, and my manager is excited but has questions. But the pitch for me very recently to my reps was support this and let me go out with it, because it's something that I know intimately and that's undeniably mine. Because I can't just write whatever. I'm not that good of a writer, but I think I can write subject matter that I know really well. And because it's such a unique time in the business, I don't have to rely on, well, let's sell it to a studio or network, and then they'll partner me up with a showrunner, and then we'll open a writer's room, and then maybe you'll get to direct a pilot, maybe not. And I said to them, I said, look, here's the pitch. I want a small writer's room, a couple writers. The show is designed to go 7 seasons at 8 to 10 episodes per, but I want to direct them all. So that's the idea, and that's the pitch that we're going to go out with. And it's something that you can do now. It's not, the business has evolved, even in the last 3 to 5 years, where you can do things like that. So there are very limited rules now in terms of how you go out with something. But in this particular situation, this is really me not giving you the story of what went wrong, but what I'm going to do, very soon, and given that, how to prepare for that. And I'm very much like Elwood, where, I have a really good knack for directing and geometry, so I like to be more spontaneous, and I actually had to jump into an episode very recently because of a tragic situation. But it's some of the best stuff that I've done because it came from the heart, it came from spontaneity, it came from wanting to do something really special. And also, the show had evolved. This was episode 7, so we kind of found the show over the first 4 or 5 episodes, but by the time I got to 7, I really had a good understanding of what Elwood wanted in the studio and the network. But ultimately, the moral of the story is, do what comes from the heart, do what you know well, tell a great story in the room, and it may not necessarily be about the script or the pilot. It may just be about you. What's your story, and why does a studio and network want to be invested in the Elwood Reed business, or the Steve Conrad business, or the Dana Scott business, as opposed to just the story. Because sometimes in this business, it's really about working with the people that you want to be around versus working with their resume, if that makes any sense. So that's, that's all I have to say.
I want to add to that, because I told you guys the bummer story, but I should tell you a quick story about that. One of my first pitches that sold, because it kind of goes off of this, which is that, a lot of this process we're talking about pitching and pitching your agents, your managers, I find as I get older, it's just you're giving people more chances to say no, which is the easiest answer for anyone on Hollywood is no, because they never are responsible to when they say no, unless the show becomes a huge hit, which the chances of that are very slim. But you know, my first pitch was something I pitched to my agent. And they go, "That's a terrible idea. You've never written TV." I was in the movie business, and they're like, "Terrible idea. You've never written TV." And they go, "We can't sell that pitch." And I go, "Oh, fuck you." I sat down and wrote a script in like 8 days. I took a bunch of speed and wrote a script. And then I sent it into my agents. I remember it was on like a Thursday or something like that. And they said to me, "Well, we can't sell this. And you know, we'll read it." So they read it over the weekend. And I get a call from my agents on Monday. They're like, "Well, we're going to go out with this." So they went out with that script that I'd written, a spec script. And within 2 days, they had a huge bidding war, and it was bought and made. It ultimately didn't get on the air. But it was one of those things where it wasn't a concept that was easily pitched. It's like, I don't know how Steven pitched. Did you pitch it with actual guitar? Or I mean, I don't know how you pitched that show. I mean, it's so, maybe it's so weird that it makes it so, because they're so sick of hearing, like, it's about a cop who drinks too much, or, you know, a woman who's trying to find the love of her life. And that's the shit they hear all fucking day, and they're bored of it, so.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, we should probably also tell you that if you haven't done it, it's just a miserable thing. It's a miserable interchange. There's one reason for that, is that nobody knows why it works when it works. There aren't rules, and there's not a guidebook. When it comes together and amounts to being art and being interesting, no one can say exactly how that happened. So the more people you have in a room, it just increases around you doubt, uncertainty, confusion. You ought to not be able to pitch something great. The best version, the only version of it ought to be the film. It should need music to work. It should need production design to work. Your story shouldn't be a campfire story exactly. Otherwise, why make it into a narrative film? So it's just a lousy half hour. It never goes well. And if you have done it and it didn't turn out well for you, it's not an indication that the thing that you have isn't valuable or won't one day be a wonderful film or television series. Elwood mentioned that saying no is the easiest thing for them to do. It's how people keep their jobs. And I don't think any of us who do what we do did it exactly to have a job. On the other side of that table, it is a job. And it's a distinction between us and who we pitch. We need them, they need us, but it's hard to communicate.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, don't you think there's a correlation? I have a lot of theories. A lot of theories, but one of my theories is that I don't think that pitching ability correlates to writing. I mean, some of the best writers I know, you know, you can't get them to look up out of their corner. They're usually lost in their own head and they're not very articulate. And it's like, I know myself when I'm either, you know, writing a book or thinking about a pitch, I don't know half of it. I don't even know 3/4 of it, and I think that's what makes me want to scratch that itch. I've seen and I've been in so many rooms and been around studios, I just heard the best fucking pitch ever, and 6 months come around and that show never makes it to the air. Because it's just so rehearsed, and you feel like, it's also like someone, and I hate when I go to restaurants and they tell me what I'm gonna eat before I eat it. You know what I mean? Like this, you know, they tell me all about the meal and what it's supposed to taste like. I was like, well, I don't fucking need to eat the meal. And I think the pitch is a lot like that. Like it's, you know, I think that trailers are a lot like that in movies now. You see these trailers in movies, and you're like, I don't need to go see that fucking movie. I just saw it in 2 minutes. So, and I think pitches sometimes, they're entertained and there's no mystery. And so one of the things I've always tried to tell people that are pitching, or I try to adhere to myself, is I try to leave them wanting more. And every successful pitch I've had, I've stopped the story short. And I think Steven says, there's usually that 15 minutes where you kind of pitch the teaser, and you know if you've got them or not, because then they want to hear more, they're leaning in. And after that, if it doesn't, then you got to kind of grind out the rest of the pitch, and it's terrible. But it's, what they don't want to hear, and this is what scares them, is like, they always pride themselves on being able to ask questions you can't answer. You know, like I got this question recently in a pitch, like, what's the show look like from 30,000 feet? You know? And my answer was, I don't fucking know, because I don't watch TV from 30,000 feet. I mean, I said, what do you really mean? Tell me what you mean. And they couldn't articulate what that question was. And so I went away scratching my head, and you know, I ended up selling that pitch, believe it or not. But it's just one of those things where I think that as writers, it depends on how you identify yourself in this business, but if you're a writer, I've written books, short stories, and screenplays and everything else. My best stuff has always come from not knowing even what the second or third page is.
Yeah.
I have an image, and then it just chased that fucking thing down, and it kind of twists and turns, and that's the fun. I hate writing.
I couldn't agree more. I think there is one worse aspect in pitching to this business, and that's test screening, focus testing. And they're connected because you can see in that room when you're pitching that the executives are transporting themselves to the focus testing screening phase, which those can go well, and it means nothing to. I can't tell you how many friends I have who have said to me things like, "Well, my film got the highest screen test rating in MGM history." I said, "Well, great. When is it coming out?" And he said, "Well, it came out 6 months ago." And it just doesn't mean anything. So, but they do organize their set of principles to cover themselves in a future environment where they're test screening and that people are, they'll have to tell you why they like something, they'll have to tell you why they don't like something, and that just changes their relationship to it. Like Lost is the spell, like you don't get to cast a spell in a setting like that, and it allows people to relate to it differently than you relate to it in your homes. It's an unnatural relationship. The pitch is unnatural, the test screenings are unnatural. It just never gets any better than when you are alone with your idea and then writing. And when you send it to that small group of friends you have whose opinions have come to matter to you because they deserve to. After that, it all is just different degrees of miserable.
Steve, I actually have a question for you. Having been so involved in so many aspects of Patriot, I'm curious, what are the things you celebrate about that part of the process? And what are the things that sort of you struggle with being that involved? I know many people that work with you on it.
Yeah, well, the writing is the hardest part. It's the only thing I do all by myself. And as soon as I'm done, then I get our group of filmmakers, who many of them are friends of mine, and then it all gets easier because we have a collective energy, and it's not just mine anymore. Writing is some people can do it, and it's a knack. I'm not even sure it's a talent exactly, but I know that it's a knack. There are people to whom it comes a little more naturally and easily, but it's always difficult to do it very well. When you can write 2 good pages, but you need to write 60, and it needs to have form and craft, and it needs to fulfill a promise the audience didn't even know that they had just made with you. And to do that well is a real feat. And then when you get on the set, then you have all these talented people who throw in. It's not up to you exactly anymore, and then it can be fun. The speed of it is the biggest challenge. Having to get ready very fast, and then having to shoot very fast, and having to edit very fast. It helps to know what you would like the thing to feel like. I don't think TV lends itself to a whole lot of discovery. I don't think it lends itself exactly to the improvisational way of making a narrative film. I think the more planned out you are, the better success you might have.
But you're talking the shooting, not the writing. So I find the less planned out in the writing than
Oh no, that's crazy, because I don't card, I don't do summaries, I don't break down scenes. I just sit there and wait for things to drop into my head. But man, on the set, I'm an entirely different person.
Okay, so let's talk about the challenges of you create a pilot, you pitched it, you sold it, it's now in production. How does that translate to the screen, and what do you have to let go of, given the budget that you're handed by the studio, given those challenges, the day-to-day shooting challenges, and...
You're gonna get me going on budgets, Dave?
Yeah,
Really?
yes I am.
Always ranting about budgets. They're meaningless.
No, they're not.
So your question is,
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the creative compromise that you sometimes have to make?
I mean, I can answer that, I think better now than I was able to 5 months ago. Look, I think that it's, the one thing you have to realize is in television, there are many different, not a couple, there are many different factors that determine time, budget, so on and so forth. And I'm really not at liberty to discuss that in greater detail because I really don't know the greater detail of the specifics as it relates to the budget. But there's certainly, when I first, I'll give you an example. So Elwood and I met while I was directing Chicago PD, and for me it was incredibly intriguing to, work with a guy like Elwood. But I also read the pilot, and I thought it was pretty incredible. The writing was really great, and it was Showtime. And it's kind of like, wow, like I hit the producing director jackpot.
Until you saw the budget.
and you, and you do, but you're still, it's not Ray Donovan or Homeland where you're getting money and success and time and success where you can do episodes in 9, 10, 11 days. Now we're having to do episodes in 8 days, but they're also 52 minutes, not 43 and change like network. So it's an extra 10 minutes, which is an extra couple days. And in network, you have a full 8 days of shooting to do to ultimately have a 43-minute show. So the challenge becomes, well, how do we do that now? How do we make 10 more minutes of TV in the same amount of time? And then it's always about, do we light faster? Do we shoot faster? Do we do this? Do we do that? And then you're making creative choices based on that stuff. So one of the first discussions that Elwood and I talked about was, what does the show look like? Does it have its own creative signature? And I had, this thing in mind of, is it Spiral, which is a Netflix show that I really love, a French cop show, or is it Slumdog, or is it this, or is it that? Is it handheld? Is it Steadicam? Do we pretend that the dolly really doesn't even exist anymore and just go for it and be more, shoot it in a more grounded, real way? And and then that's episode 2, and then the studio sees that and they're and they're like, whoa, and it's jarring, but it's ultimately it'll be okay because they'll see more and more of that in episode 3 and episode 4 and episode 5, and then it becomes its own show and its own machine. But you still have the challenges of you have to kick off certain scenes because you can't do them in 8 days. So when do we do those scenes, and when do those scenes get shot, and so on and so forth. So not to say that, and by the way, I'm sure that Stephen and Elwood and I and Dana were not at all, trying to say, well, don't even bother, find a better job, because that's not the case at all, because we heard that quite a bit when we were coming up in the businesses. You'll probably find more success getting a union job or, working at Prudential or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, also it's a great time. There hasn't been a better time to be in this business. There is so much content. There's so much content that there are many jobs. We need good writers and good filmmakers. There's a dearth of them. And because the marketplace is crowded, the ambition becomes standing out in a crowded place, and it pushes the quality. So you will be discouraged at almost every turn. It's just it's a job like that people feel like they can do better than you, but they don't know that you know, it's a feat of endurance, athleticism, and persistence, and talent, and you have to have these inner resources just to be able to sustain yourself over the amount of time it takes to break in. Now, once you're in there, though, many people are watching this new art form. It is a great new age. Now, and I don't know that I would pick another era to be making TV. I sure want to make it like in the 70s when the Rockford Files was on Streets of San Francisco. Those were cool shows.
You would have gotten rich too. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, your grandchildren would have been rich.
but that also might anticipate another point you could make, that my friends who are doing the best seem to have sort of accidentally done well. Like they seem to not even notice that they're being well paid. There's another reason they're doing it. And, that stuff comes to you sort of incidentally. Like if you are good at this, that will happen. But wanting to be good at it will make you good at it. Wanting to be rich will not.
I mean, I have like a dim view of it too, because it's sort of like basically a carpenter. I mean, I was a good carpenter, but I wasn't like as good as the guy who'd been doing it for 30 years and could barely walk. You know, he knew how to, like, you know, make something really nice or set a nail away I couldn't set a nail. I just find that the more I do, it's like what I realize with the people that survive in the business, there's a level of craftsmanship you have to learn, whatever part of that business is. And like that craft, what I mean by craft is just these tricks that you have that you've learned over the period of time. That gets a little bit easier. You have more of that in your back pocket. Unfortunately, as you get older, you get more negative and more judgmental of your own work, and that's a barrier to sort of that feeling you have of just sort of falling into. I liken it to, like, I don't know if people still read anymore, but that's my primary consumption of media is reading novels and stuff. There's that feeling you get when you fall into a novel and time falls away and the world falls away. I don't get that in anything else in my life. I get that when I'm writing sometimes, or when the project's going well, you get that feeling. I'm always chasing that feeling. And I think the craft helps me overcome some of the rough spots, because it's, you run into that bump, like, oh fuck, I don't know how to make these two characters meet. And you go, well, I can, you know, you learn these little tricks over time that sort of allow you to jump these barriers that back when I was younger would take me 2 or 3 weeks to figure out. But that spark, the thing that's there, I mean, for example, I'm writing multiple projects right now, and 1 out of every 3 of those projects just has that thing. The other projects might have better material behind them, or, you know, bigger people behind them, more money or whatever. It's just that little thing that's there, and I don't know what that is, and you can't quantify that. They haven't done it yet on TV, and they haven't certainly done it in the movies yet. No one knows what that little thing is yet. And every year you see movies and TV shows break through because of that little unique twist or kink that's in them that just people want to watch. And that's something that I can't replicate ever. It just happens.
Yeah, have you ever gone on that site where it asks you what your job is, and then it tells you the odds that a robot will be doing it in 5 years? It's so sad. If you put in filmmaker, it's like 5%. And almost every other job sort of trending around 20 or 30%. And that's what Elwood's talking about, that thing that we can do that robots can't yet, I hope.
I don't know how to fucking do it though.
No,
Is that what you do?
you do. You just
No,
don't know how
but
to
it's just
talk about
kind of like dumb. It's like a roulette wheel. I just throw them, you know, I throw it in there, and sometimes it lands. Like, oh fuck, and I can't replicate it. But I keep telling people, it's like that. We're also talking earlier about that no. That no you take as a rejection of that, and I think that's, you know, I mean, you've all heard this because I'm sure you've all been knocking around, but it's like that's the hardest thing, to just keep getting back up. And I was an athlete, so I just learned to get knocked down and get back up, knocked down, get back up. And I think that really is what this is about. You can't be precious about this stuff either. And again, all this layers of business that we're talking about is this bureaucracy that's put in a way to sort of like, I don't want to say slow you, because I don't believe that if we were in charge, things would be anything better. It could probably be worse if you may have, but
It'd be weirder.
Yeah, it'd be weirder, but you know, the percentage of good stuff would still probably be the same. You know, it's just, and sometimes I find that these barriers, that I'm bashing my head against the wall. Sometimes I write things out of anger. Like I wrote a script that was a really good script, just out of I was so mad at the producer that I was working for, the notes they were giving me, and I said, fuck you, and I, you know, wrote the draft that I knew that they would hate, and they loved it. I mean, so it's like, you know, those are those are sort of the, you know, I just, everything is different for me, for me at least, it's why I left, you know, network television, is that the job is, that we're doing, at the level we're doing right now, is so different every day, and it's exciting, and that's what I'm most excited about. It's like, I just don't ever want to trudge to work every day, like, you know, just bored of what I'm gonna do, and knowing, you know, yawning, like it's just, you know, scripts are falling out of my pocket. It never is that way, and I think that struggle is what makes it exciting for you, and if it doesn't make you excited to do that, or you think you've only got one in you, then, you know, maybe you should find another business, but I just keep trying and trying and trying, and I think that's the, you know, the goal, the whole thing is just, you know, that chase. I'm always looking for that chase, and I don't know if you tell us, I also know within the first 10 or 15 pages when I'm reading something, if I can feel that from somebody else, and I can feel that spark, that electricity. And you just see it jump off the page, and go, oh, there's a story this person has to tell. This character's really good, that dialogue, that voice. And like, so when you're trying to break through, I do think, even though they, meaning these studio executives we talk about and the agents, I do think that they're not the best judges of that. They're not immune to seeing that spark. And the best ones, even the ones that are complete, you know, buffoons and idiots, they have this gut. That they can recognize that little spark. And that's just, you gotta find people that can see your spark, or see whatever that is. You know, I'm not saying everyone's special like a snowflake, but it is, you just gotta find that person that goes, yeah. You just have to find that person that goes, oh, I get what you're doing, and then they can help you do it better. Whether it's with money or with, you know, directors or actors, and you know, that's what they call it the stars align. It's just when you have that project and all these additives make it even better.
We're gonna open it up for questions now for a little bit, right? Do we have any time left? For questions, does anyone have any questions?
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process of like selling to Amazon or HBO. Did all of you go through agents, or did you do it yourself, or just a little bit more about that process?
So the question was, do you go through agents when selling it all?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much, you have to.
You have to. I mean, they do this thing which is really annoying, which is back when I was a writer, agents would call and pre-pitch the area. You know, so you'd pitch an agent your show, and they go, well, it's a show about, you know, a spy who plays the guitar, and then your agent would pick up the phone and fuck that pitch up to the studio and go, I think he wants to do something with music and a spy, and in the studio go, we're not interested. So that's when you're at a lower level. When you get to the upper levels, they will take the meeting where you can actually go in and speak. And then, you know, it's always, it's real, I think it's a little bit different with some of the other outlets, but getting that person in the room that can agree, that's really important, because you do not want to have to pitch again. Because I mean, my best pitches have been bought right in the room. Someone goes, great, we're done. You know, and they stop you halfway through, like, I like it, we're done, let's go. You know, they want to do the job right there. So, but it usually is done through agents and or managers. And you'd be surprised, like, I know a lot of people at much lower levels of business that they come to me like, you know, someone who's like an electrician or a grip-on tech goes, I got a meeting with so-and-so. How the fuck did you get that? And he's like, oh, my manager knew him from, you know, from a golf club or something like that. You just never know. It's just getting in the room and getting in front of that person to be able to pitch them. That's really kind of what it matters. And then it's just having them to be open to the idea that this could be something that could be successful.
Yeah. But I am afraid it is a necessary first step, is getting a.
You can't walk into any place and pitch. So they're just not. They're inundated with stuff.
I have a question for Elwood Reed. Is there any possibility at all that your marvelous novel, If I Don't Six, will ever be made?
No, someone keeps trying to, I think last time I sold it to $1 for James Franco, and he sent me the script that was unrecognizable. I tried to adapt it myself, which I will never do again. I hate adapting my own shit, I will never do it.
It's a marvelous book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So probably like the one person who read it. That's why, I mean, I'm not kidding you. I could not make a living writing novels or doing journalism. That's why I moved to TV and movies. I could not figure out how people made a living. What I subsequently found out, the majority of novelists or people that you think are novelists are married rich, come from money, or live like bums and have no family. You know, I had none of that stuff. So I was like, you know, every kid I had, I just increased my nut, so it priced me out of writing novels. I'm writing one right now, and I know, you know, I'm still under contract for it, and it's like, it's a Western. No one's gonna fucking read it, but I'll publish it because I owe the book. Again, I think it saddens me. I do think the very business that we're in now, TV, it was interesting you say that. One the big jump I made from writing books to television was when I heard people talking about television shows the way that my friends and I used to talk about great books. When I heard people talking about The Wire and Sopranos in the same way, I was like, oh, we're fucked. You know what I mean? I was like, and I started watching, I was like, oh my God, because I don't say dismiss TV, I just never got into the serial, and I don't really care about, just generic, show of the week. But when it started to take on the forms of the novel, that's when I really, fell in love with the form. And I think it's really affected books. You can see the book sales. Really.
I think it's one of the reasons George Pelecanos has done so
I know
well
George, yeah.
with episodic
Yeah.
television.
Exactly. And it's funny, I know so many successful novels who you think are rich and they're desperate to get into. They're all broke. Everyone's broke that's in this business. You just scale up. It's like, you're talking about TV budgets. I know people that are doing shows that are $8 million an episode and they're fucking complaining about not having any money. I mean, it's just, you just scale up your sense of living.
Yeah, you always spend all of it.
Yeah.
I have a question. In terms of selling agents and making sure that you're finding the right person who will give you the right advice, will put you in front of the right people, will speak on behalf of your project, how do you go about finding that agent?
So the question was about finding the right agent for selling your projects.
They have to like your stuff. That's the first thing. You have to hear them tell you what they like about your stuff. That's the most important thing. They have to, first of all, they have to be able to read. I know a lot of these people do not read. I'm not kidding, they do not read. They skim, and skimming is not reading. And so you have to hear them speak intelligently about your project and have a passion. The same passion that you approach that thing, they should have that for your project. Now, they may be delusional, they may have no connections, but I'll take that passion. That person could eventually stumble into something. You want that passion. So, yeah, okay. I have so many young writers that are 500, they're on a list of 400 writers at some big agency. It's useless, they're lost.
And it's a personality fit, I think, too. I mean, a lot of it has to do, one of my agents, and I've been through, like probably all of us, a handful of different agencies. And when I landed at, where I'm at right now, one of the 3 agents that were part of my team left, and I stayed with the other 2 because those 2 guys really got me, and they knew the stories I wanted to tell. They were passionate about it, and I think that's what's most important. Also, more so than I think even digging your what you're writing, but I think a personality thing. Because if I get Elwood and I know what he's going to be like in the room, and he gives me the the 3 or 4 lines to pitch his project, I'm going to be able to do that a lot better service than if I'm just looking at what he's pitching and not really getting to know who the guy is in the room. And again, it goes back to what I was saying before. A lot of people in this business, they want to do business with people that they like. And you may not have the best idea, it may not be the best project in the world, but for some reason they believe in you so much that they want to give you the shot, and that's what I think it's all about.
If they tell you you're going to get rich or they're going to get Brad Pitt in your project, fuck them. I mean, they're lying. I mean, that's the wrong way to approach it.
Right.
I mean, that was always the lies that were told me. Oh, I can get Brad Pitt. Yeah, right. Or you're going to get rich. I'm still not rich. So those are the wrong motivations. You have to. You have a story you want to tell, your personal story. Let me help you figure out a way to tell that story. If that's what you want.
And I want to end on that, but we're going to make time for one last question, but it's got to be a quick one. Let's go to, do you have anyone in the back? Hit it, better be good.
What are some of your favorite networks or showrunners or shows out there that are doing like cutting edge, awesome things that you love?
What's your favorite, yeah, there we go. They're pointing at you, Steve. Let's go down the line and have all 4 of you talk about a show that you love that's on TV right now, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh man, I get so intimidated when I'm writing that I can't watch anything that is happening contemporarily. So I haven't watched a current TV show for about a year. I have though discovered a show called The Mighty Boosh, which is an English comedy. It's about 8 years old, and I've watched it 3 times now. So I would say that this English program called The Mighty Boosh is mine.
I'm not being paid to say this, but his show, I will say, I hate everything. And I watch it because I didn't know where the show was going. I just didn't know. And when I saw the guy pull out a guitar, I was like, oh, okay, I'm in. I didn't know. And so I think I just get so jaded and bored. But I mean that in all sincerity. I've never met this man before.
You so much.
I've never met you before, right?
Nonsense.
No money.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Elwood.
A show that I really got into several months ago was Goliath. And I just love Billy Bob and what he's doing on that show, and the storytelling is really cool. And I tend to like, just really cool, grounded, real stories. So I just felt like that was a super interesting show to watch. And I haven't begged for a job yet on it for season 2 because they're all booked up. But if I were gonna direct something, Steve won't hire me because he's gonna direct them all. But Goliath is something that I would love to do if I could. But yeah, that's probably the one show that I gravitated toward in the last year.
Got one for us, Dana, to wrap it all up?
I'm in Elwood's camp, I have to say. I thought Patriot was an incredibly smart.
What was that weird stoner kid show you were talking about the other day at lunch? Let's hear it.
Don't hug me, I'm scared, or wait,
Yeah,
hug
yeah.
me, I'm scared.
Yeah.
That's weird, check it out. It's
Well, which is it? Because those are two very different requests.
That's the name of the
That's
show.
name of it. Don't hug me, I'm scared.
Okay.
Check it out. I think you will like it, Steve. No, I thought Patriot was a phenomenal show, and my guilty pleasure was White Little Lies.
Round of applause for this wonderful.